Welcome to Season 4 of the Hope Warrior Project podcast, where we are ditching the mindset of powerlessness. Our guests have let go of the belief that life is happening to them and have chosen to see that life is actually happening for them. If you want to get inspired and empowered in your own life, these are the stories you want to hear.
Hey friends, before we get into the episode, I want to invite you to think about an area of your life where you feel stuck. Whatever that is for you, I know that this episode will give you some great ideas on how to get started on getting unstuck. But if you really want to dive deep and you're ready to figure this thing out as soon as possible, with the support of an amazing community, I have great news. September 7th, we're starting the next Hope Warrior Project Academy. In this virtual workshop, we will go through a process together of examining our beliefs and behaviors that may be keeping us stuck. And for 4 weeks, we'll do the reflective work to claim our power to make lasting change. To learn more, go to www.hopewarriorproject.com and click on Hope Warrior Academy. Today's episode is all about the power of dreaming and believing. We have a conversation to share with you between Stephanie and Amy Johnson, who is a health coach and works with women with disordered eating. The first time we talked to her, I could feel that we have very similar energies. And as we got to know her story, I could see that our stories of shifting from a powerless mindset to a powerful one are very similar. The specific circumstances are different, but the feelings are very much the same. And that is what I love about doing this. Sharing personal stories and experiences, we start to see that we are a lot more similar than we are different. And someone will articulate something we were feeling or still are feeling in a way that resonates, and we will have these light bulb moments that can have an incredible impact on our lives. To give you some background, Amy is an artist who describes herself as multi-passionate. In the past, she may have described this as being confused or distracted because she really struggled to find her place in the world, being interested in so many different things. But she felt that it was somehow better to know one passion and to focus on that and make a lasting career out of it. You know, people that are born knowing they want to be doctors or lawyers, and that's what they do, and they feel fulfilled in that. Stephanie and I could definitely relate. Like, what do we want to be when we grow up? It was never really clear. She tried her best to follow this quote-unquote normal plan to success as she perceived it at the time, but no matter what she did, she found herself in a cycle of poverty, doing things for little money that she did not want to do. I can relate. She really felt like no one valued what she had to offer. You won't hear it in this interview, but when we originally started talking, I clearly remember Amy talking about having feelings of, why can't I just be normal? Why can't I be happy doing a quote-unquote normal job? I still struggle with these thoughts. So here are parts of her interview with Stephanie. Hang around after with me, and I will break down how, like Amy, we can find power in building up our beliefs.
Welcome back to the show, everyone. Amy, thank you so much for being my guest today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here. It's a privilege to get to share.
So let's go back to your story. And so we heard in the intro about, you were in this place of really just feeling, didn't really know where to focus, doing jobs you didn't really like. You ended up in this, financial stress, feeling depressed, et cetera. So what do you think led you overall to feeling so powerless over your circumstances?
Yeah, it's such a good question. I think it's a bunch of different things. I've done a lot of reflecting about this over the years as I've worked through all this stuff. And I think, partly one thing is just all the kind of trauma that we all go through, like whether it's big or small. I don't really think I don't think it's worthwhile to compare big or small, but just I believe we all go through some level of trauma just in our childhoods and in our early adulthoods and in our lives. So I think a combination of kind of like the huge in terms of trauma. And then also this fact that I was this creative person and this person who wanted to be an artist. And there's there is definitely kind of a story out there that of the starving artist, and that it's like, you know, to be an artist is to struggle financially, and it's like feeling like I didn't know what I wanted. And I think, you know, that had to do with my, you know, my capacity to reflect and have emotional intelligence and figure out what I wanted and feel like self-worth and all of that stuff. So yeah, so I just like, I ended up kind of working lots of different jobs, not really knowing how to fit in, not knowing how to make money, not really wanting to make money, like feeling really angry about that. That was even a thing I had to do. And I think I didn't feel, I think you mentioned in the intro that I didn't feel like anybody valued what I had to offer. And I think it's the important part of that sentence is like that I didn't feel that that people would value what I had to offer, because I don't think that's actually true. But I think I really struggled with feeling valuable and feeling like I had value. And so I worked for really low wage jobs and customer service and situations that weren't healthy for me and weren't good for me. And just kind of ended up in this place of just like getting myself into more and more debt and being depressed. And to go back to the, you know, everybody having trauma and going through different life experiences, I also developed coping mechanisms to deal with that. Like, for example, one of mine that was a big one was my disordered eating. So I had struggled with that for a bunch of years. So my health was kind of suffering. And it just sort of all led to this place of feeling really depressed and hopeless about the future and about my ability to do something that I actually enjoy doing and make enough money to survive or fit into society, and actually and feel good and be happy. I just like I didn't see a way to do that.
You know, you were mentioning, you know, the various things that you are struggling with. It's almost like, you know, like this idea of the perfect storm, right? You know,
Totally.
and it is hard when you've got multiple things that you're struggling with that maybe you've not been able to resolve in your life, or you haven't really reflected on it. You have these coping mechanisms, maybe that you didn't even realize were a coping mechanism. It's just something you naturally did. All those things just can just like culminate into this feeling that just keeps you down. And sometimes I think we just don't even realize what's happening. And two, you know, I know when we talked before, you had mentioned that you weren't allowing yourself to dream.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. I think, well, I had this belief that that life was hard, life was suffering, it was going to be a struggle, and that's just the way it was going to be. So that I think that was part of it. I didn't want to let myself, I didn't even know how to let myself believe that something else was possible. And then also, I think, to come back to just my own personal stuff from the different things I had been through, and like my own depression and my disordered eating. And I didn't feel like I really think that I didn't feel worthy of a life that I loved, or like I didn't feel worthy to dream, which is really sad. But looking back on it, I think I didn't even consider the possibility that I could sit down and dream up what I want. I mean, of course, when I was little, I was a huge dreamer. I was like so creative and so alive and just dreaming all the time. And I had all these big dreams. And that was part of me being this multi-passionate person. Like I had so many dreams. And just over the years, it just kind of got tamped down, you know, by myself, by other people, by my experiences. And I just got to this place where I didn't feel like that was an option for me. I don't think I was even thinking about it, right. You know, I was just sort of stuck.
All right. So what was the turning point for you in your 30s? What happened to start changing how you were thinking about things?
Well, I ended up going to graduate school to study art. But once I graduated, I just had this gut feeling, this intuition that like being a professor wasn't the right fit for me, which was a huge bummer because that was my plan. And it was such a nice, lovely plan that had such a nice, clear path. And it was like I was going to have a salary and health insurance, and it was going to be so great. Right. And then I kind of was like, shoot, I don't want to do that. So I kind of, meanwhile, by the way, went to grad school with lots of debt, no money saved up. So took out all the loans they would give me. So at this point, I'm like mountains of debt. And I'm back to this place of, I don't know what I'm going to do with my life. And I like the thought of continuing to work low wage jobs and not doing something that was meaningful to me and being under it almost felt like it wasn't an option because I had now acquired so much debt. I was like, I have to figure out how to make like real people money. And I don't know how to do that. I don't want to do what I have been doing. It was like, and I was having some struggles with my health and depression. I was just like, I just kind of had a crisis. I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do with my life. And like the plan that I had is not happening. So I was wandering around the bookstore. This was like right around graduation at the university. And I saw this book on the shelf called You Are a Badass at Making Money by Jen Sincero. And I don't know why it just stood out. It's bright green. I grabbed it off the shelf. I didn't overthink it. And I took it home and read it. And it totally changed my life. And I think, it's interesting because for me, the turning point came through it came through wanting to figure out money, but it was about everything. Mm-hmm. So I mean, it was like the avenue that got me to completely change my mindset and completely change my life was the avenue was trying to figure out how am I going to make money. But I almost feel like it could have been any avenue, but that was the crisis I was in, was how am I going to participate in society and make enough money to survive and not be completely miserable. Right. And so that was kind of my entry point into completely opening my mind and changing my mind about how I could live my life.
And I think you mentioned too, when we were talking before, you related to her story, because wasn't she a bit of, an artist and, kind of finding her way as well?
Yes, totally. Yeah. I think it was the perfect book for me because she's a creative person. She was an artist. She's like, had been in a band or maybe still plays music and was a writer. And she had kind of a crisis moment too, where she was like sick of hearing herself complain and sick of being broke and decided to figure it out. And so she tells her story in the book. And I could totally relate to that because I was so sick of hearing myself complain. And I was so sick of being stuck in this cycle. And I was sick of being depressed. It was like, I think for a while being like a cool, depressed artist, like smoking my cigarettes and like being all grouchy was cool and fun for me. But after a while it got old. It's like, actually, when you really experience depression, it's scary and it sucks. And like, so anyway, I could relate to her story of just being at this point where I'm like, I've had enough. I'm ready to turn it around. And her story gave me hope because she was similar to me and was way stuck, way down, and was able to get herself out of it and build a really great career and financial life and all that.
And I think that's such a key because you could have picked up any book, you could have picked up another book about how to make money, right? And maybe it wouldn't have had that impact on you, but the fact that the author, had some similarities to your life, it kind of allows you, I think, to put yourself in their shoes a little bit. And if they've been able to come out of it, then you can almost maybe see yourself coming out of it, right? Because you can connect to that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I was like clinging on to that, to the fact that if she can do it, I can do it. If she can do it, I can do it. I mean, it was totally about relating to her story and feeling like, yeah, I'll just repeat myself. If she can do it, I can do it.
Yeah. Which I think that's one of the reasons we do this podcast, is because we feel like if I can hear someone else's story and I can relate to them in some form or fashion, and I can see how that they've been able to overcome their challenge and, have a different mindset or perspective, then if they can do it, I can do it, kind of same thing. So yeah. I love that. So then what did you start doing differently after, having, reading this book, having this new way of looking, getting your hope back? What was different for you then?
It's interesting because I think that allowing myself to have hope that I could make money and that I could get out of debt and that I could, like be a person who's actually participating in society and like and all that. Like, I think that having hope in that area opened up the possibility that I could have hope in other areas. And so it was a really big mindset shift for me, just in believing that anything was possible. Because if it was possible for me to get out of debt and make money, like literally anything was possible. Mm-hmm. Because that felt so impossible to me. So yeah, and I, one of the things that I remember doing was actually sitting down and trying to visualize and what I wanted for my life, which I had never let myself do, or at least not in my adult life, I hadn't let myself do. And I remember feeling kind of like when I very first tried it, it was really hard and it was just kind of sad. So like, I don't know what I want, and I don't even know where to start. So just practicing that and practicing examining my beliefs. And one of the things that Jen Sincero talks about that I really like is thoughts, words, and beliefs. And it's like how powerful those are. And so I started like noticing my thoughts and noticing the words that I use to talk about life and to talk about money and to talk about possibility. So just noticing that stuff. And yeah, and then the other thing that was a big deal for me was that reading that book made me realize that I wanted to be an entrepreneur and I wanted to start my own business. And I felt really inspired to do that because she had done it. And also I felt like being an artist really prepared me to be an entrepreneur, and it was like a really good fit for me personally. So it completely launched me on this new path of deciding to start a business. And so then from there, I was like, I have to figure out what business I'm going to start. But that was really exciting.
Very cool. And yeah, when you were talking about the power of, your thoughts and your words and all, there's a saying, and of course I can't remember exactly how it goes right now, but it's something along the lines of our thoughts become our actions become, our character, something like that. But it starts with a thought. And when we can notice them, recognize them, choose better thoughts, then that has a ripple effect in our life. And sometimes it's really hard to change those thoughts and to choose a better thought, because sometimes we're in a, just a spot where I don't want to think good. I just want to be depressed. I just want to be mad or whatever. That's okay sometimes. But I think overall, when we're aware of that and notice it, it makes a huge difference in our lives.
Yeah. And I think it was really powerful for me to realize that I could change that, that I had control over it, that I wasn't just like, that I was not powerless or out of control in terms of my thoughts and my words and my beliefs, that I could actually change them if I wanted to.
Right. I love that. So can you give an example, after kind of going through all of this, how is life happening for you these days? Like, how are you perceiving life now as it's being for you?
So I started seeing all the stuff that had happened in my life as actually a source of, the different like knowledge and wisdom that I've picked up and like the growth and the healing. And so that's something that it's like an attribute that I have to offer the world and to offer other people. So that's part of it, I think, is looking at my past and being able to say all of that stuff is actually, really great, because it's made me into the person I am now. And I have all this experience to pull from. And then same thing for just the present and moving forward. Like now, when I just have such a different outlook. And, when I very first decided I was going to start my business, and I started working with a business coach, and I started building this idea and deciding to become a coach, I actually ended up, I was working for a horse trainer at the time, and I got bucked off and broke my back. and I was also like having all these other health problems. And it's just like, I know if that had happened to me when I was in my older mindset, I feel like I would have just gone down the darkest hole. Like I can't even imagine. And it was so cool, because when I broke my back, I was like, all right. I mean, of course I had a few days of like shock and like, I can't believe this happened. This is awful. And I'm in a lot of pain. But once I was kind of like stabilized and home and like out of the worst of the pain, I was like, cool, like I get to stay home all day for, however many months. Like I have all this time to work on figuring out how to build a business. So I just like went to work, and I would like wake up every morning and get dressed and put my back brace on, or for a while I was actually just lying down all day, but I would still get dressed and like brush my teeth, and then like get my materials out and study and write and do stuff. And so I think that's just one example, but a bunch of challenges have come up since then. And I just feel like the shift that I made, which was really a shift of feeling hopeless to feeling hopeful, that shift it almost took all of my depression away. I won't say that I don't still have, I sometimes still have that, and I have days that are hard, but now I feel like I can move through challenges so much easier, so much more easily.
That's so encouraging to hear. And I love that you break your back and you're like, okay, cool, I get to stay home. But it's that whole perspective shift. Like you said, that it happened in your 20s, that probably would not have been your response. So, I mean, what a testimony to such a massive shift you've made in your thinking and your mindset about that. And something else that when we were talking previously, preparing for this, you had mentioned that, from an outside perspective, maybe, someone could look at your life and they wouldn't be like, oh my God, look at, her life's just amazing. It's just made 100%, or 180, whatever it is, turn around. Everything's going smoothly for her. Like the outside perspective, maybe it doesn't look like it's been better, easier, or whatever, but you said like your internal world has shifted, and that these challenges you faced haven't been as bad as what you felt before, which I think is an important point to make too, because we can sometimes get caught up in this idea of, well, it has to look like we're doing amazing. Like what are other people thinking of me? And that can get in our heads, but knowing that it's an internal work, that if things are different inside, it is going to show on the outside, but it's not like your life just all of a sudden is easy. It's how you deal with the struggles that come through to your life.
Totally. Yeah. And I think sometimes I've heard people say it has to get worse before it gets better.
Love that. All right.
I'm like, oh, that's so annoying. But yeah, totally. Like I think I made this big shift and this decision that I was gonna, like, I started to feel hopeful that I could build a life that I loved. And I started envisioning that, and I started dreaming, and I started being I was really excited about it. And of course, like my life didn't turn around overnight. I mean, yeah, like I broke my back a few months later and was, and then of course all kinds of stuff happened. I ended up having to move. My car died a couple times. It's just like, but I'm slowly moving in the direction of my dreams now, and it feels really great. And it's like I think, yeah, that internal shift is what has allowed me to take small steps to keep moving forward in the direction of the vision that I have. Yeah. Because yeah, it's not going to happen overnight.
Hey guys, it's Lydia again. I hope you enjoyed Amy's story. We have found that so many people will give credit to books as a reason for having this mindset shift from powerlessness to feeling empowered. And in this case, the book was You Are a Badass at Making Money by Jen Sincero. This is actually a follow-up book to her original, which is You Are a Badass, and that book played a huge part in my own personal story. So I highly recommend both. Stephanie and Amy talk about how important other people's stories can be for our own. In Amy's story, her crisis was around money, so she was drawn to that story. She saw so much of herself in Jen, the author, and the result was that she was able to have hope for herself. This is a huge part of building up belief for yourself, finding someone who has gone before you and can open up the possibilities in your mind. That's usually how it starts. If you feel stuck, you set an intention to figure it out, and then you open yourself up to stories. Maybe you've already done that, and that is why you're listening to this podcast. The right stories will find you. Then you need to allow yourself to dream your own unique dreams. We first connect to someone's story and feel inspired by what they were able to accomplish, but then we need to think about what we want for ourselves. Amy talks about not feeling valued, and that was really keeping her from letting herself dream. And without letting herself dream, she could not have a vision for her life, at least not one that felt aligned and true. So step 2 is really to allow yourself to dream. Listen to people's stories for ideas and inspiration, but really tap into what you desire for your life. If you could design your life without limitations, what would it look like? You cannot hit a target if you do not know where it is or that it even exists, right? Through Amy allowing herself to dream, she realized that she would love to have her own business. I love that she made that connection that being an artist fit well with being an entrepreneur. That really resonated with me because I always thought growing up that being an entrepreneur was a result of being really passionate about a certain thing and then just magically having it turn into a business. So when I was drawn to having my own business, but not really knowing what direction I would want to go in, I really struggled with feeling like an imposter. But Amy is absolutely right that you can be drawn towards entrepreneurship as a form of creating. Which brings me to step 3, and that is noticing the obstacles. Something that really gave Amy hope, and I can relate, is that through reading the book, she learned that we have power over our thoughts, or at least that we have power to choose which thoughts we agree with. This was also a huge realization for me. Stephanie talked about this a bit in the interview, that it all starts with our thoughts. Oh, and a belief, it's really just a thought that we have agreed with over and over and over again. So in Amy's case, she believed that people did not value her. She had some experiences early on that led her to having that thought, and the more that she allowed herself to agree with it, the more her reality reflected that back to her, and the deeper that belief became. The amazing thing about this is that we may not have full control over the thoughts that pop up in our minds, but once we have found hope, maybe through somebody else's story, and once we have allowed ourselves to dream and we know what we want for ourselves versus what other people have wanted for us in the past, we can decide which thoughts align with that vision and which ones don't. I like to make things simple, so I thought of it as like playing Mario. As I'm making my way through the level, there are all these things that are coming at me that will slow me down if I get too close to them, right? There's like these mushroom people, there's like these turtles that are throwing shells at you, and if I interact with too many of these negative things, I stop moving forward and I have to try all over again. Then there are things like the red mushrooms and other empowering things that I need to find intentionally to move forward. The mushroom makes me bigger and harder to slow down, and these are just like thoughts. The ones that are out of alignment with what we want for ourselves will come at us, but we can avoid making contact with them or agreeing with them. The thoughts that reflect what we want may take a bit more effort, but when we can get ourselves to agree with them, they empower us. But obviously, first we need to look at what is happening. If you were to play a game of Mario without looking at the screen, it would be pretty impossible to make any sort of progress. Then we also need to pick up the controller, right? So again, if you're looking at the screen and see all the threats coming, but don't have the controller in your hands, progress is impossible. So you need to be both observing your thoughts and then navigating which ones you need to work around and which ones you need to intentionally seek out more of to empower you. This is really how you build belief. It's as easy as fun. It's as easy and as fun as playing Mario. The best part is that just like in Mario, you can keep trying. You can save progress and keep trying that tricky level until you figure it out. So step 1, connect to stories. Step 2, allow yourself to dream. And step 3, notice what is in your way. And this is usually your beliefs, which breaks down into thoughts that you are continuing to allow yourself to agree with. Now let's get back to Stephanie and Amy, where Amy will share what she is currently doing with her business and how you can get in contact with her if you connected with her story.
Well, so for anyone out there that really related with your story or would like to, follow you or connect with you further, where could they do that?
Yeah, so I didn't really talk about this very much, but it's definitely a big part of my story. I ended up being a health coach, and I work with creative women who struggle with dysfunctional eating so they can enjoy healthy, loving relationships and focus on their work or what they want to do with their lives. So, and this came from my experience, the experience that happened for me of me working through years of disordered eating and a really terrible relationship to my body and to myself. And I feel like in order for anything to happen creatively or anything you want in your life, it kind of, one place that's really good to start is with the body and like with health. Because if you don't have health, it's kind of hard to do other stuff. So anyway, so that's what I ended up deciding to do. So I have a website, it's amyjohnsoncoach.com. And I have a starter kit on there that's free to download if anybody's curious about their relationship to food or their body. That can be really helpful. It has a little quiz and it has some tips and it has a meditation too, a guided meditation. And then I'm most active on Instagram, and my Instagram is Amy J Coach.
Awesome. I mean, I'm really interested. I want to check out the free starter kit. I think that so many of us there's something there with, how we relate to what we think about our body and food. And that's a big issue for a lot of people. So it's really cool that you have that resource there for folks to look at. I'm going to check it out. So anybody else listening, I encourage you to go to Amy's website, check out that starter kit, any of her other resources, follow her on Instagram. And we will put those links in our show notes so folks can just easily connect with you there. But this has been really interesting. I love your stories. It's very unique. I mean, I don't think we've talked to anybody that has wanted to be a cowgirl. And so that's super cool. I mean, and you actually were doing some, working towards that. So you have a really interesting story, a really interesting life. And it's so cool to see how you have taken your multi-passions and have been able to find something that you feel passionate about, you have experience with, that is allowing you that outlet, and then you're able to help other people with it as well. So I wish you all the best in your business and your life and whatever else comes along. Sounds like you're definitely in the right frame of mind to be successful in life. So thank you again for joining today. It was great to have you.
Thank you so much for having me.
If you were inspired by today's guest, be sure to save this episode so you can go back and listen to it again. Making the shift from feeling powerless to empowered is not a quick and easy thing to do, we know, but our desire is that you've gained hope and confidence that it's possible and so worth it. Now, go hit that subscribe or follow button so you don't miss the next episode.